Pollack, who's CEO of Pollack Company, economic and real estate consulting firm down in Scottsdale. He's going to talk about state economic issues.
I wrote this thing about 2 weeks ago in anticipation of a Democratic president and a Republican Congress. So the year of the snail economy is what I was going to call this. But now I'm going to call it, will Trump make a difference? And the answer is we don't know, but he could make a huge difference, and a huge positive difference, right? And we'll talk about that. And again, it depends on whether he does things correctly. We'll talk about that. Let's talk about the expansion. Can the expansion last? And the answer is, I believe it can. Is the sky falling? Well, no, I don't think so. But I'm going to talk about the same thing that the other two guys talked about, and that what a crappy recovery this has been. Now, in theory, if you have a massive recession, which creates a lot of pent-up demand, you should have a massive recovery. Never happened. I will blame it on bad policy, and we'll talk about that later. But the one thing I'll tell you is this recovery is getting old. It's now 88 months old, which is the fourth longest in post-war history. Again, you can see where I changed things. We are now deeper into the expansion, so the risks are higher. But President Trump and the Republican Congress are going to make things very interesting. He kind of can do what he wants. Obama did what he wanted, but he never used Congress, so it didn't really matter. Now, if I was going to say, how would you spur an economy? It is really quite simple. You basically cut taxes. That's worked 3 times in the 20th century with Democratic and Republican presidents. You lessen burdensome and capricious regulation. You limit legislation that creates quasi-monopolies known as crony capitalism. And since the queen of crony capitalism won't be there, I don't think there's a problem. You reduce barriers to international trade, and that's the thing that scares me about our president-elect. And you reduce barriers to credit creation. You do that, the economy is going to do something good. So let's take them one at a time. President Trump's plan. Now, I had to read this stuff last night. I actually read it during the campaign in the anticipation of a reporter calling and asking about Trump's economic program. I did not get one call. Now, I get calls from reporters probably 5 times a day. Not one of them asked me about Trump's economic program, which shows you what they thought was going to happen. It's the same reason why I forget his name, but he asked Trump, are you going to go along with the results of the election? But he never bothered asking Hillary. Nobody anticipated this. All right, so he's going to lower it from 7 to 3 brackets. As you can see, if you make $50,000 or less, you pay no taxes. If you make more than $225,000, you're at a 33% rate, and down from a maximum of 39.6. And again, the lowest rate is 12% down from 15. There's going to be a higher standard deduction and a cap on itemized deduction. So essentially, taxes are going to be lowered. Corporate taxes, importantly, are going from 39 to 15, and the repatriated profits will be taxed at only 10%, trying to get the incentives to get money back here. Trump plans to massively reduce regulation. He also plans to limit the ability of former members of the cabinet and members of Congress to lobby. So less crony capitalism. He wants to end that Dodd-Frank, which has turned banks into utilities, nothing more. And he is not a fan of FIT, is what I get at it. He also wants to have a massive infrastructure spending program, essentially by incentivizing the private sector to do it, rather than have the government do it. And he wants to open all our oil, gas, and coal reserves, not reserves, but the stuff that's in the ground, essentially so we can tell the people in the Mideast see around, you know. Not a bad idea. He basically, international trade, my analysis of what he has to say, is the scariest thing, because if you start a trade war, all bets are off. And we'll see if this is one of his famous negotiations, or we'll see what happens. Here's what bothers me the most. He keeps on talking about manufacturing. End of World War II, anybody know what percent of the jobs were manufacturing jobs at the end of World War II? How about 50%? Okay? By 1975, it was 22%, and it continues to decline, and we're down to roughly 8.7% are manufacturing jobs. Those jobs have been replaced by professional business service jobs and education and health service jobs. We're becoming a service economy, not a manufacturing economy. I'm not sure we can turn that around. I think this is just the nature of the economy now. And so if you're counting on a major shift in manufacturing, boy, that's tough. But we're facing a potential for a massive change in the way we deal with the economy. And if it's done right, it could, you saw what the growth was under Reagan. That's the last time we had a massive change in the way we dealt with the economy. That potential exists. This is exciting. I don't think anybody really appreciates the nature of the changes. This is like day and night. This is seismic. Now, it's time to be cautious, not because of those changes, but because the recovery is getting older. But the expansion can last. We think we're somewhere around here. The expansions don't die of old age. That's a fallacy. They get older and they become more vulnerable to shocks. Just as when you get older, you become more vulnerable to disease. It's not much different than that. But they die because the economy becomes vulnerable to exogenous shocks or asset bubbles or tightening credit markets. I don't see those at the moment. Let's take a look at leading indicators are up, consumer confidence is up, and most importantly for me is the Treasury spread. There's never been a recession, as far as I can see, where the Treasury spread didn't give a loud and screaming warning. And that warning doesn't exist at the moment. And the Fed actually takes that and puts in the probabilities, and the Fed believes there's about a 10% chance of a recession. Usually when it gets to 30 or 40, we're in trouble. So the conclusion is the possibility of recession today is higher, but it's still low. Now let's talk about the economy as a whole. Consumers, debt burden is low. This is financial obligations ratio. It's how much people of their income goes to previously accumulated debt, and that's where it was in the 80s. Consumer credit card use is still relatively low. There are only two things in that top blue line: auto debt and student loan debt. And student loan debt has quadrupled. It's a problem we'll talk about. All right, liquidity is improving. There's no irrational exuberance that I can see. Net worth is improving. Real income is up. Inflation is low. There's no capacity issues. Government is not a drag on the economy. And the Fed is still expansive. The last thing the Fed wants is a recession. Why? Because as far as I can see, Dennis didn't comment on this, but he counted on the panel, they're out of bullets. They don't know what they're doing. They're guessing, right? And so the last thing they want is a recession. Housing prices are up modestly, and so if done correctly and with some luck, we're in for faster growth. Let's talk about Arizona. Historically, Arizona's been about 73% of all the jobs and population in the state. Since the recovery started, about 87% of all the employment growth has been in Greater Phoenix. The rest of the state has not fared all that well. But it's only when you compare yourself to the way we used to be prior to 2007 that you really have a bad feeling about things. When you compare yourself to other states, we're not doing that poorly. It's only when we compare ourselves to how we usually do that we're doing poorly. So, but the world has changed. Pre-2007, post-2007, the world has changed. Rita, shake your head. The world has changed for Arizona. And here's some evidence. This is where we rank out of the 50 states. And yeah, during recessions we went down a little, but basically we're first, second, or third until 2007, and it's been miserable since then. We're back to 7th so far this year, which is great, but it's still not second or third. And Greater Phoenix, same thing. Things have changed. So let's talk about what's changed. What's different? Well, you have a subnormal national growth, and you have a slowdown in population flows nationally, and that's really affected us. Why? Because population growth itself is an industry in Arizona. When you have 100,000, 120,000 people a year moving here, you need to prepare for them. You have doctors, lawyers, you have, unfortunately lawyers, you have doctors, you have guys selling suits at Dillard's, guys selling cars, you have all these people to service these people. And when they don't show up, those jobs disappear. Well, again, historically we grew at 3.2%. Right now we're growing at about 1.6, so about half of normal. So all that infrastructure for those people went away. Now what usually happens is, when in a recovery, you basically get the unemployment rate to very low levels, and you create a lot of jobs, so you suck people in from the outside. When they come here, they bring their own demand for goods and services that creates more jobs, that means more people come in from the outside. That isn't happening this time. One of the reasons is the unemployment rate, while low, is actually much higher than what is normal for this point in the cycle. We'd normally be sub 4%. And where are we? Well, we're higher than 5. So the bottom line is, we never got that sucking sound because we didn't create as many jobs, and because the unemployment rate didn't get as low. Now, in terms of growth, again, if you take a look at the monthly gain, the last one, it's much lower than any cycle we've ever had in terms of growth. In terms of population growth, it's not even in the same league in terms of how much we've grown on an average annual rate in this cycle. And so that's what's different as far as I can see. Fewer people means fewer housing, less commercial construction. The unemployment, or excuse me, the employment isn't nearly as what would normally be average, or way below average. That's true in Flagstaff as well, by the way. And so where are the population inflows? And where are the people? Well, they're not moving. We compared 2001 through 2005 to 2011 through 2015. Movers from abroad, down 21%. Movers from other states, down 36%. Movers from other counties in this state, down 16%. If you're moving from your house to a house a block away, that doesn't matter. You haven't changed the location you demand. But the people that would normally be moving here aren't moving. And again, 2000, 2005, 2010, 2015, you can see that, again, it really is a problem. There's another problem. Our capture rate, during that 5-year period, the beginning of the century, we captured 7.6% of all the people who moved. That's amazing for a state this size. We're down to 3.2%. So there's fewer people moving, and we're getting less of them. That's a problem. Here are the capture rates by 5-year increments. You can see we bottomed out, but still way below normal. So, conclusion is that, again, it's basically going to take a while. Population growth, we're 8th, way below normal, as we said. Coconino County also way below normal. All right, so how quickly is this population growth thing going to change? Slowly. Our estimates and U of A's estimates and Department of Administration estimates basically throw a hat over them. And the Department of Administration is saying we're stuck at this level for quite some time in terms of population growth. So let's quickly, I'm going to cover the housing market. If you believe these numbers, and I had to use Phoenix because that's the only area that has enough data to do this stuff, there's enough demand for about 20,000 single-family units a year. They'll be at about 18,000 this year. So that's about where we're going to stay. But let's take a look at the parade of horribles for housing. It's becoming less scary. And we'll talk about it one at a time. Negative equity foreclosures, millennials, student loans, tougher loan standards, FHA loan limit. Again, the number of people with negative, near negative, or negative equity nationally has dropped from 57% to 14%. That means more people are going to be able to move. That's a positive. The number of people who are in the penalty box. If you had a foreclosure, the blue line is when the foreclosures occurred. The red line is 7 years later. Because if you get a Fannie or Freddie loan, you're in a penalty box for 7 years. A lot of people are coming out of the penalty box, and we'll be through 2019. That's good. Credit availability. By the way, This and the next slide show why you should never believe anybody who uses numbers in his presentation. Credit availability, 2012 shows things are a lot better. Let's take it back a few more years. This is the same numbers, but starting in 2004. It doesn't look quite as good. Millennials, they have been able to push off adulthood into their 30s. It's amazing. The thing with millennials is there's more of them than there are baby boomers. And so they will really affect demand for the next several decades. One of the things is they're not getting married. They pushed off marriage really almost at 30 years old. And when you delay marriage, you delay having children, you delay needing a house, and you delay going down to Home Depot and buying all that crap you buy and never use, put in your garage and forget about it. Well, that's a big deal. And that will change, but probably we're 5 years away from that change. Student loan debt has quadrupled from $262 billion to $1.3 roughly trillion. I won't comment on it, other than to say that when the National Association of Realtors does its annual survey on why can't you buy a house, the number one issue, the number one reason for people 35 and younger is student loan debt. That's what they are buying a house. Basically, they bought it in the form of a dorm. If you basically are paying back your student loan debt, you're not buying houses or furniture and beer. Well, maybe you're buying beer, but it's a problem. The housing recovery is likely to continue. Single-family permits are way down from the peak, and they're likely to stay that way, both in Phoenix and in Coconino County. Population to change to single-family homes, it's above normal. We should be building more houses, but again, I think it's primarily millennials at this point. Multifamily housing, the thing I will tell you here, this is births like 26 years. This is retirement, baby boomers like 65 years. And what I'm saying is, there's tremendous demand. The demand for apartments has never been better in the history of mankind than it is today. Because millennials are, not only are there's so many of them, but they're staying in apartments 6 years longer than baby boomers did because they delayed marriage to almost 30. And baby boomers, a lot of them that do have equity in their homes will sell their homes, move into apartments, and use that equity to live out their life. So tremendous demand. Rents are up almost 8% in Phoenix and apartments. You don't get that type of kick in rents in a 2% inflation environment unless there's a shortage, period. Vacancy rates are low, they're going to stay low. I don't think you can build enough apartments, which is why I told you that you were in the right market. Office, well, vacancy rates are coming down. It's usually about 15% when you get that boom. And there are already at least 4 major markets where vacancy rates are under 10% in Phoenix. We're going to have an office boom as well, industrial. Vacancy rates are low, absorption is very high, that's good news. Retail is the one thing that bothers me the most. Vacancy rates are still high, and there's almost no new construction, and that's simply because, how many people buy crap on the internet? My wife is, my house is like a warehouse. It boxes every day. Then it goes home. You know, all right, so what's the overall conclusion? All right, the world has changed. That's pre-2007. This is post. And there's no traditional boom in Arizona until population flows pick up. In fact, this is the boom. In fact, I'll go to this last slide. That was left over from the Hillary presentation. This is as good as it's going to get. Now I'm going to put me. I'm